This is the 95th Taiku in the Babylonian Talmud. A Taiku is an unresolved question. Tradition has it that we need to wait for the Messiah to get the answer. There are 317 of these Taikus listed in the Talmud. This is information that I received from a book called Taiku, written by Rabbi Aharon Yoshua Pessin, who compiled all the Taikus. And I thought that was a very interesting idea and interesting work that he did. And he published this back in, it was around 2006, I believe. And so I became interested in that when I heard about it at the beginning of this Daf Yomi cycle back in January of 2020. And decided to do something like that, just to read all these Taikus, and here it is. The 95th Taiku in the Babylonian Talmud appears in Tractate Sotah, page 4b. Plemo Omer Kedei Shetoshit Yada L'Sal Litol Kikar Bayravashi D'Mahadago D'Lamadag Bechad Bechadita o Be'atika, Bechamima o Be'karira. The Gemara discusses another opinion cited in the first Braita. Plemo says, this is equivalent to the time that a woman may need to extend her hand into a basket in order to take a loaf of bread. Rav Ashi asks, is this speaking of an occasion where the loaf adheres to the basket? Or is it speaking of a case where it does not adhere? Is this speaking, I'm not sure what he means by adhere. Stick to the basket? I'm not sure how that would make a difference. But anyway, okay. Is this speaking of a case where the basket is new, whereby the tips of the shoots forming the basket might restrain the loaf? Or is this speaking of where the basket is old and smooth, enabling easy removal? Is this speaking of a case where the loaf is hot and therefore softer and may adhere to the basket? Or is this speaking of a case where the loaf is cold and easily removed? Okay, so this was the last line of 4a, and now we're on top of 4b. Okay, B'dichti o b'disha'ari Taiku. Is this speaking of a case where the loaf is made of wheat, which is slippery and takes longer to remove? Or is this speaking of a case where the loaf is made of barley, which is easily removed? Wheat, which is slippery. If it's slippery, it would be easier to remove. I don't know why they're saying that. They're saying basically it's longer to remove. Okay, and barley is harder to remove. Is it speaking of the case where the loaf is soft? It may catch on the side of the basket, or is it speaking of a case where the loaf is soft so that it may catch upon the side of the basket, or a case where the loaf is hard, where it is not a concern? The Gemara states, Taiku. For this we need to wait for the Messiah, and Elijah the prophet will answer all of our questions. I mean, if you're still here, the thought came to me. I mean, they always say Elijah will answer the questions, but I mean, why doesn't the Messiah answer the question? That's why